Good evening. I'm Robert Greenwald, the director of the film. I want to thank you all for coming. Our schedule's a little bit in a state of flux. I'm from Los Angeles, so we're not used to all these things changing in terms of votes and procedures. So I'm going to be very brief now. We're then going to show 7 minutes of the clip, and if the magic forces are with us, then Leader Pelosi will arrive right afterwards, and then right after that, Senator Reid. So just to briefly let those of you know this, we started this film and the research for the film 3 years ago. It was inspired by Jane Mayer's really critical article in the New Yorker magazine. And our goal was to produce a film that could tell the personal stories, the stories how all of us pay a price for the policies of the billionaires who are attempting to buy politics and buy politicians and buy up the systems. Back then, almost nobody had heard about the Koch brothers, and virtually no one could pronounce their names, I remember. And our first job was to help get that story out there. Thanks to our distribution model, which is based on the digital, and the fact that the Kochs viciously attacked me personally, we got quite a bit of attention, and over 8 million people saw either parts of the film or the full film or clips from the film, and we were able to do the first part of our job, which was to let people know what was going on. The new film that you will see some clips of today was really inspired by Citizen United and the Koch brothers' roles in Citizen United and the fact of how much money is being spent in this post-Citizen United world. I'm very, very pleased to say that the film will be free. It will be available, the full film and clips and sections from the film, again, using social and digital media to reach the audience that we don't have the billions of dollars to reach, but are able to be reached because of the engagement of so many people who feel so strongly about this issue. The issue that affects them very personally, that they are paying a price, their jobs, their schools, their homes, their health care, you name it, and every single one of those issues is impacted by dark money in politics. So we're going to show the 7-minute clip now, and then hopefully we will have the others speak with us. Thank you.
Income inequality is getting worse and worse. Something's wrong, and people know it. Even a dog knows the difference between being stumbled over and being kicked.
I've never, ever in all my years in government seen anything like this. I don't admire the Koch brothers. I'm not against people who make money, that's fine. But what they do with their money isn't fine with me. The Koch brothers, they are bound and determined to do away with government.
The streets! Our streets!
Billionaire brothers Charles and David Koch are the poster boys for the top 1%, using their money and power to fuel the growing inequality in America. Day in and day out, we see the Kochs using their billions to purchase politicians and policy, taking a terrible toll on democracy as they knock down the middle class, stomping on poor people. The Koch boys claim to be self-made men. Yeah, made by their father Fred, who made his fortune in the oil business in the Soviet Union of the 1930s. Stalin himself brought Fred Koch into the Soviet Union to build oil refineries and teach them how to be oil engineers. Fred Koch came back to the United States after taking money from the Soviet Union and used that money to start his own oil empire and accumulated millions in a short time. Fred Koch wrote screeds against the civil rights movement, saying that it was communist-driven and that white children should not go to school with black children. He said it would lead to the mongrelization of the races. This is the climate that the two brothers, Charlie and David, grew up in. And then they inherited a big pile of money from Daddy Fred. And then they put that into their own organization and helped build it up to where it is now. An enterprise that, so far, has put over $100 billion in the two Koch boys' pockets. Koch Industries is the second largest privately held corporation in the country. They have holdings that range from oil and gas to paper products, forestry, consumer goods, plastics, and ranching. And the most important thing is not that they have wealth, it's what they're using that wealth to do, to run roughshod over the American people. Koch Industries is filthy, one of the top 15 polluters in our country, responsible for up to 300 oil spills. They paid over $100 million in fines and legal settlements, and a federal jury found that Koch Industries stole oil from American Indian lands, which their younger brother, Bill, blew the whistle on.
Koch Industries has a philosophy that profits are above everything else.
The Koch brothers are trying to buy America.
Over the years, the Koch brothers have spent over $80 million on at least 85 organizations to serve their agenda. The Kochs have set the stage by building an ever-growing right-wing presence called Kochtopus. Through this vast network, scripts are written.
We instituted a photo ID requirement for every voter.
Actors are cast.
Regulate CO2 under the Clean Air Act is wrong and should not be allowed to stand.
And the show is played out on a national stage. But if the curtain is pulled back, we discover that the production is all under the direction of the Koch brothers.
$10,000 to the Pacific Legal Foundation.
$20,000 to Representative Fred Upton, chairman of the House Energy and Commerce Committee.
Over $10,000 to Republican Senator Ron Johnson of Wisconsin.
$9,000 to Republican Representative Paul Ryan.
$35,000 to House Speaker John Boehner.
$250,000 attacking the economic stimulus.
$250,000 on negative ads in the 2012 campaign.
$23,000 to
over $2 million to the Institute
the Republican
for
Governors Association.
$3.5 million on a
promoting
nationwide
term
campaign.
limit legislation in Washington
over
State.
$1 million. $3.4 million on the
$8 million.
$1.4 million on
80%
Libertarian vice presidential candidate.
$8.7 million.
$7.9 million to start citizens.
The Libertarian. $14.4 billion.
2012 election cycle, $400 million.
They are interested in using the money they make to buy a political system that allows them to become dominant players in the shaping of the country.
A blockbuster decision from the Supreme Court today, opening floodgates for companies to spend all the money they want attacking political candidates.
In a major 5-4 decision, the court gave them more power to spend as much money as they want.
I mean, I think this is a political game changer. It's historic. It's a grenade.
The Supreme Court reversed a century of law that I believe will open the floodgates for special interests.
Citizens United is a perfect example of how the Koch boys work to create a legal decision that supports their efforts. First, two of the justices on the court, Antonin Scalia and Clarence Thomas, have attended private meetings sponsored by the Kochs, providing behind-the-scenes interaction. Second, the Koch brothers helped fund numerous organizations to prepare thousands of pages of legal briefs that were sent to the Supreme Court advocating unlimited corporate spending on political campaigns. And third, Ted Olson was the lead attorney representing Citizens United during final arguments in front of the Supreme Court. Today, Ted Olson represents Koch Industries' private legal cases. So now, the Kochs use the law they helped to write to spend millions more in their efforts to buy the public policies they want.
What the Supreme Court said to the Koch brothers, you can buy the United States government. Why would you hesitate 1 minute to spend $1 billion, $2 billion? That's pretty good.
Senator Kay Hagan is having trouble telling time.
You like your insurance plan and your doctors?
And their health plans canceled. Healthcare costs are soaring.
Hundreds of
Families
millions
are losing access to the doctors.
Dollars spent on clean energy went to jobs in foreign countries.
It looks like they already bought the House. The Koch brothers can buy the Senate. Then what's next? They're going to buy a president?
He's fighting, and welcome him to speak.
Well, first of all, thank you. Not only for the good work you do with this, but the stuff you've done on the two wars have been outstanding.
Thank you.
We owe a debt to you. It's great to see a movie that is true.
Appreciate it.
Leader Pelosi's not here yet, but of course, we're partners in all we do. She is a wonderful legislator, a great leader, and a good friend. When I started this, talking about the Koch brothers, one person always was there and saying, thank you for doing this, but not only patted me on the back in private, but stood up in public and talked about how he thought I was headed in the right direction. Senator Bernie Sanders. We're here, even though the Koch brothers don't want us to be here. We're here because they're trying to buy our democracy. But they can't shut down the right to free speech, even though the Supreme Court's done a pretty good job of it. The ability to speak should not be dependent on how much money you have. Free speech is what it says. But under the interpretation of the Supreme Court, the more money you have, the more free speech you get. And the Koch brothers are really putting that to the test. Koch brothers don't want us to be here. The Republicans don't want us to be here. The Koch brothers' tentacles have sunken deep into our democracy and deep into the Republican Party. That's evident by the fact they even tried to stop us from having this meeting. It doesn't, I've seen my Republican colleagues run to the floor many times when I say something about the Koch brothers. They run there and defend them. And here we have a Republican House member that is now trying to say, well, we shouldn't be having this meeting. We should be having this meeting, shouldn't we? Yes. The flood of outside money into our political system is one of the greatest threats to our democracy that has ever happened. Not in my lifetime that has ever happened. America should not be for sale, and we need to do something to stem this tide of this. And I think a constitutional amendment is what we need. We shouldn't have a system that pits this billionaire against that billionaire. And for this week, it's which billionaire do you like the most? That is not what our system should be. We need to make our voice heard in the old-fashioned way. A lot of foot leather and town hall meetings and those kinds of things. Or at least set limits on what you can spend and not spend in an election. They're not there anymore. I can remember my 1998 election. It was really close. I won by 428 votes. My opponent and I both spent about the same amount of money. But in those days, the Supreme Court created a loophole that you could funnel corporate money into state parties. That's what was done in the 98 race all over the country. I really didn't feel that I had been corrupted, but I felt when these large amounts of money were given that it was corrupting. The next election, we had McCain-Feingold. I felt like I'd taken a bath. It felt so good. But then the next election, Citizens United back, and we were down in the dirt again. So I'm here to just join with you in saying the system needs to be changed. We're not going to lay down. We can't. We can't lay down. We have to continue to fight under the rules that have been given to us. But that doesn't mean we can't try to change those rules, and that's what we're all going to do. Please agree with me. Republicans want to change they want to keep things the way they are. We want to change the status quo. They want to keep them the same as whatever. Republicans believe that money is free speech. And I've watched, as I've indicated, one senator after another run to the floor and talk about what great guys these two men are. They want to do away with Social Security. They don't believe that climate change exists. They want to do with all EPA regulations. They basically don't want any law enforcement. They just want laws there in effect to see how much money they can make, how much more money they can make. I want to see a system where people at the bottom can climb to the top. I want to see an America where corporations can't pollute the air we breathe, the water we drink, and in the name of more profits for the top 1%, that's why, Bob, this film is important. It's important to show the American people that America shouldn't be for sale as it is today. This film pulls no punches and shows the world the severe threat we have. I've talked about climate change. It's a severe threat. What the Koch brothers is doing is a severe threat. We have to change the rules. That's what this movie's all about. Thank you, Bob, very much. Nancy, before you stepped in, I told him what a good legislator you are. I told him what a good person you are, what a good leader you are, and what a good friend you are. Nancy Pelosi.
Thank you very much, Harry. It's my pleasure to welcome you and our former colleague on the House side, Senator Bernie Sanders. Of course, Harry Reid was a former member of the House as well. Harry, thank you so much for your leadership. Robert, congratulations to you on your film. Harry Reid is the most courageous person that I know in politics. He pulls no punches. And as a former boxer, that's a good thing to know. I want to join him in welcoming those of you who are here this evening as we gather. Our nation and our democracy has a challenge. When our founders sacrificed their lives, their liberty, and their sacred honor, in their words, at the birth of our nation, they did so for a democracy, a government of the many, not a government of the money. And that is what is happening today. The undue impact of money in politics because of the Supreme Court decisions is something that we must reverse. But until we do, we have to identify what the challenges are to our system where the opposition to raising the minimum wage or having clean air and clean water and fighting for the safety of our planet and how we pass it on to future generations. And this has not been a Democratic-Republican thing. We've had bipartisanship on many of these things along the way. I talked about our founders. I'm now reading The Bully Pulpit about Teddy Roosevelt, Harry, and President Taft. And in the book, they talk about when McKinley was president, and just before Teddy Roosevelt, a Republican, became president, there was a strike, a coal miners' strike. In those days, the coal mines were owned by the same people who owned the railroads. They had a trust, and the workers were at the mercy of. They had to use scrip to buy things in the company store. You know, they were wholly owned by the trust. McKinley, as you know, was assassinated. Teddy Roosevelt became president. But in the meantime, while they were talking about how are they going to stop this strike from happening, the president of the coal miners, his name was Mitchell, he was a very reasonable person and well-liked and tried to understand all sides of an argument and the rest, and very beloved by the coal miners because they knew he was looking out for their interests. The head of the railroads and the coal mines made a statement to the effect of God in his wisdom made people of wealth the ones who would determine what would benefit working people. Imagine that. And he went on and on in saying that it was, God's will that he, a person of wealth, would look out for poor people, working people. The newspapers of the time just mocked him. And why I bring it up is because they said this. It was one bad thing to have divine right of kings. Now they want to have divine right of plutocrats. And doesn't that sound familiar? Doesn't it sound familiar? Now, we don't begrudge anyone their wealth and their success and their achievement, and we even welcome support of people who share our values. But when that money is tied to the personal aggrandizement of those people, there's something wrong with that picture. Keep wages low. Stop regulation of clean air, clean water, climate issues. All of those things are harmful to our planet, to our workers, to our children's future. So that's why when people hear the name Koch brothers, it has a negative connotation by 2 to 1, because they know that this is not these are not people who share their values about fairness in our economy, safety in the air that our children breathe, but people with an agenda. So, there's a lot more that can be said about all this. I know you want to hear from Bernie Sanders, a champion all this, and I have to go up and speak on the floor about what's happening in Nigeria right now. But I did want to come down and thank Robert and pay my respects to Harry Reid for his courage, his leadership. Again, thank you all very much for coming. Should I yield the floor to the distinguished senator, or should I yield back to you, Mr. Chairman?
I never want to do questions.
Okay. So I yield to Bernie Sanders. I'll take that liberty since we're on the House side. Thank you very much.
Let me thank Leader Pelosi and especially Harry Reid, with whom I've worked on this issue for a long time. Harry Reid gets beaten up every single day by somebody or other because he keeps talking about this issue. But at the end of the day, what history will show us is that Harry Reid was exactly right in warning the American people that if we don't get our act together and pass a constitutional amendment overturning Citizens United, if we do not stop the huge amounts of money that are coming into the political process, this country is well on its way to losing its democratic foundation and becoming an oligarchic form of society. So I just want to thank Harry Reid for his courage in what he is doing. Now, the media often reports about the huge amounts of money that the Koch brothers are spending. And it's going to be hundreds of millions of dollars, I suspect. In the presidential election, it could be more than that. Under the oppressive tyranny of Barack Obama, who has strangled the economy, the Koch brothers last year only saw their wealth increase from $68 to $80 billion. So they only saw a $12 billion increase in their wealth. What does that mean? What it means is for them, they have an endless supply of money to put into the political process. A few $100 million does not mean anything when your wealth went up by $12 billion in the last year. Now, most importantly, what I want to say is that there's discussion about the Koch brothers, the role they're playing in the political process. There is not discussion about what they stand for. Now, if somebody's going to spend hundreds of millions of dollars, we need to know, what do they want? What do they want? Well, I want to tell you what they want. In 1980, David Koch ran for vice president of the United States on the Libertarian Party ticket, and he helped fund that election. I want to read to you what was in the platform that David Koch ran on, and I happen to believe, and I have not heard otherwise, that their views have changed in any significant way on these issues. What do they believe in? What do they want? What is their vision for America? I quote you exactly, word for word, from parts of that platform. Quote, this is 1980, and the important political message of today is how far they have gone in taking these ideas, which in 1980 were called kooky, crazy ideas, into the mainstream of today's Republican Party. Quote, we urge the repeal of federal campaign finance laws and the immediate abolition of the despotic Federal Election Commission. Do you know what the chairman of the Republican Party today now believes? exactly that. Citizens United did not go far enough. McCutcheon did not go far enough. What they want is the abolition of all laws so the Koch brothers and others can give directly to candidates. We favor, quote, the abolition of Medicare and Medicaid programs. Quote, we favor the repeal of the fraudulent, virtually bankrupt, and increasingly oppressive Social Security system. Social Security gone. We favor the abolition of the government postal service. You're hearing that discussion a lot. We support the repeal of all taxation. What does that mean? It means the end of government as we know it, the support of all taxation. And constant, today we see the tax on the IRS. As all of you know, we are fighting to raise the minimum wage. What did the Koch brothers say back in 1980? We support repeal of all law which impede the ability of any person to find employment, such as minimum wage laws. In other words, they want to abolish the concept of the minimum wage so that people can work for $3 or $4 an hour. We advocate the complete separation of education and state. Government schools lead to the indoctrination of children and interfere with the free choice of individuals. What does that mean? That means the end of public education in America. We condemn compulsory education laws, and we call for the immediate repeal of such laws. That means kids 13, 14 are back working because they're not in school. We support the abolition of the Environmental Protection Agency. No kidding. This is one of the larger polluters in America. Yes, they do support that. Now listen to this last one and think about what their vision is for America, and I quote, we oppose all government welfare, relief projects, and aid to the poor programs. All these government programs are privacy-invading, paternalistic, demeaning, and inefficient. The proper source of help for such persons is the voluntary efforts of private groups and individuals. End of quote. You know what that means? Goodbye food stamps, goodbye Head Start, goodbye unemployment insurance. And if you're 80 years old and you're diagnosed with cancer and you don't have a lot of money, you're not going to have Medicare there, you're not going to have Medicaid, maybe some church or private individual will give you some charity. That is their vision of America. And I have no reason to believe that it has changed since 1980. So I just want to end by congratulating Robert. Robert and I have worked together for 30 years. Came to Vermont to do a film, Sweetheart's Dance. My wife and I were in the film. Great film, go out and see it. But briefly in the film, right. Well, congratulations, Robert, for all the great work you're doing. Thank you all very much.
So juggling our program a little bit here. Thank you, Senator Sanders and Pelosi and Senator Reid. We're now going to show one more clip, which will be the minimum wage clip, very relevant to what we've been talking about. And then Marge Baker will speak right after that.
Billionaire industrialist and my future face twin, Charles Koch. In an interview with the Wichita Eagle, the cute Koch said he wants to eliminate the minimum wage because it creates a culture of dependency.
I'm living off of minimum wage. Big hug. Being on minimum wage, it's really hard getting by. I live on, my house is through Section 8, but I can't afford to find anything extra or anything better. It's really hard trying to get by. I think the fact that the Koch brothers are trying to take away minimum wage is ridiculous. I'm just filling out the forms that, my public assistance they require in order to get assistance with anything. If minimum wage was just raised $1 or $2, I wouldn't need public assistance. $13 million a day sounds wonderful, and I couldn't imagine anybody making that much even being concerned with somebody making minimum wage. It just doesn't make sense to me how they could even consider taking it away or lowering it. If anything, I think they'd be giving back and helping us. When you share together, the fun just never ends. The end. Well, I'm recycling our cans and our bottles. Sometimes we don't have enough money at the end of the month, but it makes me feel like what I'm doing at work isn't enough. I'm just a step closer to being homeless.
It really angers me that billionaires like the Koch brothers have the audacity to create laws and fight certain laws that determine the way I provide for my family.
We're not asking for a wage to live upon. We're asking for a wage to get by on.
Right now, I'm just making $8.25 an hour, which is not enough. It's very difficult for me.
Why would the Koch brothers want to take that minimum wage away from me if I barely make enough money to living?
I struggle with, providing daycare, childcare.
Sí, a mí me gustaría ver a los hermanos Koch caminar una milla en mis zapatos.
When I see about the Koch brothers' homes, I believe you don't need that many houses that big for something. Like, probably my apartment is as big as one of their bathrooms.
I'm just trying to provide for my family. That's it.
Sí, el salario mínimo, con el salario mínimo tú vives al día y aparte de que vives al día siempre estás endeudada.
The Koch brothers, they're doing wrong by, that's a great sin, is greed.
Ones for us to work on, because we had to find a way to take these enormous numbers and have them make sense for people. And so based on the information we've been able to get, which is only part of it, we came up with the number based on Koch income that has really been affecting people, this idea that a minimum wage worker would have to work 76 years to make what the Kochs make in 1 hour. And that's been something that people all around the country have been responding to very strongly as we've begun the messaging digitally. And I'd now like to introduce Marge Baker, who's the Executive Vice President for Policy and Program for People for the American Way. She supervises their policy and programmatic work, including its campaigns on the courts, nominations, LBGT, equality, voting rights, and election. Prior to her current position, she was staff director for the late Paul Wellstone. Ms. Baker is a graduate of the Yale School, has served as a law clerk in the federal judiciary, as a counsel on the Senate Judiciary Committee, and is head of consumer protection. Marge?
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone, for being here. And Bob, this is just an incredible film. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing this with us and sharing this with the movement. I'm here to talk about remedies. We've heard about the problems, and there is a huge movement organizing out there to deal with these problems. It's multifaceted. I want to go into that in a minute, but it's all about restoring the First Amendment, restoring government by the people, restoring a government that is of, by, and for the people, not, as Leader Pelosi said, of the money. And so there's a whole host of remedies that we're looking at, and this is a big problem, so it takes a big and broad set of solutions. There are legislative solutions. There is, for example, real serious work going on to pass the Government by the People Act in the House and the Fair Elections Act in the Senate, which is about empowering small donors to contribute to campaigns, to replace the large, huge amount of money that we're seeing. There's measures to try to increase disclosure so that we know more about how the folks like the Kochs are spending the money. And there is the remedy that Senator Reid talked about, which we know Senator Sanders and Leader Pelosi also support, which is amending the Constitution. We've got to amend the Constitution to get a permanent solution to restore the power of the First Amendment and make the Constitution work for the people and make our elections work for the people. The Supreme Court has so strained the law, has so strained a reasonable interpretation of the Constitution that the only thing that we can do right now is to amend that Constitution. And there is a real movement to do this going on. There are millions of people around the country who are working on this issue. 16 states are now on record, either through ballot initiatives in those states or through the work of their state legislatures. They're on record in support of amending the Constitution. There are more than 550 municipalities around the country, large cities like Los Angeles, Chicago, San Francisco, and a huge number that have passed ballot initiatives. And what's really, really important about this is when the people vote on this, whether it's in the state of Montana or the state of Colorado or in cities across the country, 3/4 of the people vote to amend the Constitution. And that means that the people are behind this solution. When they go out and have an opportunity to vote at the polls, they vote for an amendment. The really exciting thing is happening is that our legislators here in Washington, D.C. are moving this initiative in the Senate. Senator Leahy and Senator Durbin have announced hearings in the Senate Judiciary Committee on June 3rd on the Udall Amendment, S.J. Res. 19, which is one of the amendments that essentially says restores the power of Congress and the states to regulate the raising and spending of money. Those hearings are happening on June 3rd. We expect there to be a vote in the full Senate Judiciary Committee sometime this summer, and then a vote in the full Senate, according to Senator Reid, by the end of this year. So there is real movement afoot to deal with this problem. Constitutional amendment sounds hard. It sounds audacious. But you know what? For a problem this big, we need big solutions. And so I'm here to say that we have serious problems, and can't thank Bob and your team enough for helping to expose how serious these problems are. And we can do something about it. It's about the people having a voice. It's about the people organizing. And I invite all of you to join in this effort. Keep in mind June 3rd hearings in the Senate on a constitutional amendment, and we go from there to a vote in the full Senate this year. We've already got 40 senators as co-sponsors of that amendment. We should have all 100, and we're going to work to get that. So thank you very much, and delighted to be here.
Thank you. And now that we've reached the magic hour, which is the end of our time here, everyone can also go online to Koch brothers Exposed, and the full film will be available at no cost. So I hope you will all go there and take advantage of it. Thank you all for coming.